Okay, so today I want to talk a bit more about the mental and emotional skills, because these are the ones that I think are underrated and undervalued and undercoached. And I certainly didn't understand the importance and the power of my mind and my emotions to my performance. And I got you all to stand up, and you all said you felt nervous before. You all said it's affected your performance at some point. And that's completely normal. That's completely normal. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but what you think has a massive impact on how you perform. The best athletes manage their thoughts and focus through their routines. Okay, so we try and encourage our athletes to use positive self-talk, use mental and physical routines to focus thoughts and attention, and we want our athletes to play freely under pressure and problem solve, to not get tense. We all get a bit tense when the pressure comes on, but that's what I'm going to talk about, is trying to understand how we can manage that, how we can perform in the big moments. Because I don't know what your goals are, sort of 60 odd people sitting in this room. Everyone's going to have different goals, but I'm sure there's a few people in this room who aspire to play nationally or internationally one day in their sport. And if you do, you're going to have lots and lots and lots of moments where you're under pressure, where your team looks for you to make a big play or big performance. And whether you don't aspire to play, you might just be playing a school match and the ball gets thrown to you on the wing and you've got the moment to win this, sort of score the winning try or shoot the winning basket. And it's how you manage yourself in that moment will really determine whether you can execute your skill or not. Okay, so what we think has such a massive impact on how we perform. Now, does everyone know who this is? Steve Smith, one of the greatest Australian cricketers of all time, current cricketer. I've got a little clip, 17-second clip that I'm going to play for you. I don't think the audio is working here, so I'm going to play it through my speaker here.
That's right. I just love batting, and I'm probably not hitting the ball as well as I've hit the ball, but I'd say my mind's probably in the best place it's been. The decisions I'm making are really good, and that's part of batting, making good decisions for long periods of time, and I'm just pleased with the decision making that I've had. No, that's right.
So there, Steve, this was after the Ashes in Australia 3 or 4 years ago. And for you guys that don't know anything about cricket, if you average 50 in cricket, you're a really, really good player. Really good. In this series, Steve averaged 137. He was amazing. It was one of the best series ever. And in that little speech there, he said, I wasn't hitting the ball as well as I know I can. But my mind was in a good place. What does that tell us? Does anyone want to be really courageous and...
It tells us that Steve, even though he wasn't batting as well as he would, he knew what he was capable of, and he had self-confidence in his skills to know that, yeah, I'm at this point now and I want to be there, and I know that I can be there, so I have to show resilience and keep working so I can get there.
Yep, very good, very good.
It's like proving your point of how technical isn't the only aspect of the game.
Absolutely. He's saying, I'm not hitting the ball at my best. Imagine you guys go and you go to the cricket nets or the basketball court, the netball court, the footy field, and it just doesn't quite feel right. Most of us go, oh, it's not my day. Oh, I'm not feeling great. Steve said, I wasn't feeling my best, but I still averaged 137 because I was making good decisions and I was mentally in a good place. And to me, that shows how important your mind and your thoughts are to your performance. Regardless if you're a cricketer or not, I think that's a really, really powerful example of how understanding your thoughts and managing your thoughts has a massive impact on your performance. Okay, and for me, it's thoughts trigger emotion, and although we can't control our thoughts, we can manage our attention and what we focus on. And like everyone who's standing at the end before, we all have negative self-talk. We all have negative thoughts that come in our mind. I think the best players, they learn, it's not a skill they're born with, they learn to manage their attention so that they then shift and focus on a positive story. Instead of thinking, I'm not good enough, oh, this bowler's better than me, this girl's faster than me, this team's bigger than me. They think, I can't wait to play. I can't wait for the contest. I'm ready. Bring it on. their story, their narrative that they constantly say and refer back to is positive. Okay, and that allows them to then perform at their best. Instead of the negative self-talk that we go down that rabbit hole and then we rock up to play and we've already talked ourselves out of the contest. We've already told ourselves we're not good enough. And if that's the case, you're probably almost always going to fail. You're not going to win. You're not going to be at your best. So that self-talk and how you manage your thoughts has a massive impact. And I didn't understand this when I was your age. I've only learnt this in the last few years as I've been mentoring and coaching athletes. But the night before my first class debut, my professional debut, I could not sleep. I had 40 minutes sleep and I went to play it in the biggest game of my life because I couldn't manage my thoughts. I couldn't manage my anxiety. Okay? And I'm going to show you a little clip from LeBron James in a second about how he does that and how we can all do that. So emotional, moving on from the mental skills to the emotional skills. Okay? Understand that how you feel has a huge impact on how you perform. The best athletes learn how to use their emotions to their advantage. So you need to understand your emotions and your feelings. And this isn't a process that happens overnight. And that's where I think having a journal or a diary or a notebook to reflect and try and write down and figure out yourself is hugely important. The more you can understand yourself, the better you will perform in sport and in life. There's a great story of two Australian openers, former openers, Justin Langer and Matthew Hayden. We're talking about cricket, and they used to walk out to bat together. Two guys going to face the same opponents. One would play loud music and jump around and dance and try and get his energy up, while the other would sit in the corner with a towel over his head, meditating, eyes shut, and try and calm himself down. The bell would ring, they'd walk out side by side to do the same thing, but they were doing what they needed to do to get themselves ready. Okay, and you guys at 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever you are, a bit older, you probably don't understand yourself enough yet, but I would really encourage you from now on, if you've never thought about this before, the more you can start to understand yourself as a person and what makes you tick, what scares you, what excites you, what motivates you. Do you perform at your best when you're really up high, or do you need to sort of calm yourself down and be really level and try and keep your heart rate down? Those sort of things have a massive impact on your performance. And if you don't understand that, if you don't know that, which I didn't, it just becomes a fluke whether you're good on that day or not. You might pump music on the way to the ground, but that actually gets you too excited and then you make bad decisions an hour later. Whereas if you just sort of listen to some raindrops, that might calm you down and that's when you perform at your best. So understanding yourself and your emotions and your feelings is really, really important. And LeBron James is going to go into that in a minute. Okay, we try and encourage athletes to stay emotionally level during performance. And what that means is if they do something great or they play a really good shot, in basketball you might hit a three, whatever, you might kick a great goal in footy, it's not getting too high, and if you make a mistake, it's not getting too low. I talk about living on the emotional roller coaster, and the players who are the best, they live very level. Whereas us normal people, we do something good, our value goes up, we feel special, we feel good, and then if we make a mistake, we feel bad, our value goes down, and we live on this roller coaster. And everything, how we feel about ourselves as a person, is often based on how we go on the cricket field or the sports field. And something that I'm really big on with my athletes, and I'm mentoring some very good athletes, some Australian underage players, and one of my boys is playing for Australia at the moment, and I try to say to them, you're a person who plays cricket. You're not a cricketer. And all of you guys and girls sitting in the room, you're sports people, but you're a person who plays your sport. And if you score runs or take wickets or you score goals or not, shouldn't affect your value as a person. And most people don't understand that. Most people don't realise that. If you score 100, you feel good and you feel like you're special. You walk around on cloud 9. And if you get a duck, you feel useless and worthless. And the same goes with any sport. You have a good game, you feel great. You have a bad game, you feel poor and average. and you devalue yourself. But the best athletes, they realise it's a tough, tough game. Sport is tough. And they learn that scoring 100, taking sort of 10 marks and kicking 5 goals doesn't mean you're a better person, and having a poor game doesn't mean you're a worse person. You just got to constantly be working hard to get better. Okay, and then finally on the emotional part is, and this is probably something that gets covered today in this sort of day, is having the sort of vulnerability to open up about your thoughts and your feelings off the field. That's something we really encourage our young athletes is, it ain't weak to speak, and if you're not feeling great or you are feeling good, all good, just come, don't be afraid to talk about it. So basically LeBron's talking about how he's worked hard at managing his emotions, and he does it through a process of breathing, putting the blinkers on and tuning out the noise so that he stays focused and in the moment. And in sport, we have so many distractions. The scoreboard is a distraction. Your parents watching is a distraction. What the opposition player just said is a distraction. And they all take our attention away from what's important. And that's what we have to do in that moment. That executing our skill in that moment. And the best players, the best athletes, the best business people, the best musicians, they're able to not give their attention to the distractions and instead focus on what they need to focus on in that moment. And for me, I think that's hugely important for any young athlete to understand and then practice. Practice regulating and managing your emotions and your thoughts, as LeBron says. And it's not something these great athletes are born with. We look at Roger Federer or LeBron James, Steve Smith, we look at these great athletes and we think that they're not like us. But I promise you, you listen to them talk, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews, whatever, they're all normal people. They all go through everything that we go through. They go through nerves. They go through the feeling of anxiety or uncertainty. They just learn how to deal with it, and they're not scared of it. I think for a lot of young athletes, nerves and